Hi, how is everybody doing? Hope you're doing all right. You clicked on this video and you probably realized it was about voting because this is making a suffragist dress, or suffragette. Really is a suffragist because I'm an American, and Americans did not adapt the term suffragette. They liked and preferred the term suffragist. They thought suffragette was demeaning, as a lot of insults, people will, say the insult to be derogatory towards a group. That group will then take that insult and then make it something positive. And that is what the suffragettes did in Great Britain. Because they were like, we're suffragettes! We're gonna get the right to vote, yeah! But Americans didn't quite go that far. They kind of stopped at the being offended part and then didn't quite get to making it their own. So they preferred the term suffragist. But the song Sister Suffragette is a really good one, and also we could call them Suffs because there is a new musical out on Broadway, which I have very much enjoyed listening to, called Suffs. Highly recommend if you haven't checked it out. Please do, and if you have, please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I would love to talk to you about it. Because of the musical Suffs and voting and thinking about voting, and having done a World War I homeschool day where I talked about women's roles in World War I and how that eventually led to them getting the vote, I had a suffrage station at a World War I homeschool day I did at my old job, and I made this dress to go along with that. So because it was a World War I homeschool day, we're looking at the 19-teens, and I was just thinking about the 19-teens in general, and like the suffrage movement, like when do I really want to set this dress, and also what do I have patterns for. So I ended up using a 1912 pattern from Butterick. It's a retro pattern, which means that it's from 1912. Butterick has been around for 150 years or so now. So that was fantastic, wonderful, authentic pattern.
Also in the 19-teens, specifically on March 3rd, 1913, was the Women's Suffrage Procession in Washington, D.C. This occurred the day before Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated President of the United States, and thousands of women from all over the country marched along Pennsylvania Avenue in the exact same route that the inaugural parade would take the next day. Another reason why I think it's so cool to make a dress from 1912 is because this very dress, this very pattern, could have been worn by a lady who marched in this procession. And I just think that that is so, so cool. Is there any evidence to suggest that this pattern was indeed made and then worn by a woman for this procession? No, but it is plausible, and I just love that idea.
This might be one of the most authentic outfits I have ever made because I am using a pattern that is essentially just a reprint of one from 1912, and I am going to sew it on my antique sewing machine. I have never sewed an entire outfit on it before. This is my first time doing it. I'm super excited about doing it though, because this sewing machine has been around for 130 or so years, and I can only imagine all of the things that this sewing machine has made. And now I'm going to add to that story by making this outfit. But like, the idea that this sewing machine could have made this outfit at the time of the pattern publication is just so cool to me. I'm such a nerd, and if you're watching this video, you're also such a nerd, and I'm so happy that you're here and you found this video and you found my channel. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to show you how I did now. But first, I want to show you the sewing machine, and we're going to talk about Singer sewing machines for just half a second, okay?
My mom found this hand crank Singer sewing machine at a thrift store for about $100 several years ago. And I had been a little scared to use it, even though it's in great working order. I was just scared that maybe I didn't understand how to work it right. Originally, when we purchased it, we thought it was from about 1890, but then I started thinking, I don't know about that. So I took the serial number that are on all Singer sewing machines, typed it in. So instead of being from the 1890s, which I originally thought this machine was when we purchased it, it's actually from 1916, which is not the exact year from the pattern, but still from the 19 teens. So we're close. We're close. And it's what I got. So it's what we're doing. I had never made this pattern before, so I need to cut out the pattern before I get to cut out the fabric. And I will be making view A of this dress, which has the short sleeves. And then also I will be making part C, which is the chemisette, which fills in the neckline. And of course, for the fabric for this dress, I will be using white cotton thrifted bed sheets. Yes, my favorite fabric of all time. Now, I needed about 3 bed sheets to complete this look. I ended up having to use a couple different bed sheets, but I tried to find ones that matched up in the shade of white. And if it didn't, well, I used it as a lining. So it all turned out okay. I also used some lace. So I used lace for the chemisette, and then I also did lace on the collar and on the cuffs for a beautiful little accent. This is not historically accurate lace. It is just some poly lace that I had on hand. Lace can be very expensive, and since this is going to be on white on white, you know, it just needs to look a little lacy. I'm okay with it. It should look a little bit different if it were to be more historically accurate. Now, I did not have to think twice about the color that I was going to make this dress. I always knew my suffrage dress was going to be white because that is the main color that suffragists wore and also suffragettes wore over in England. They wore this color for several different reasons. One, it stands out really great in black and white photographs. So when you are trying to make press and get that publicity to get your message out, you want to stand out. It looked great in photographs. So reason 1, it looked great in black and white photographs. 2, it's kind of like a uniform. If everyone's kind of cohesive, wearing the same thing, you look united, you look like you're putting up a great united front. And then 3, it also is one of the colors of the suffrage movement. So in America, the main colors of the suffrage movement are purple, yellow or gold, and white. In England, the colors for the suffragette movement were purple, white, and then green. Yellow was one of the oldest colors of the American suffrage movement and probably one of the main colors. But white was thought to represent purity, purity of cause. It also reminds one of a bride, very feminine, very demure. And when suffragists were in the press, often very masculinized, they were thought to be not feminine. Trying to look very feminine helped combat that stereotype. And therefore, that is another reason why white dresses were important and why suffragists wore white dresses. So obviously I was going to make my suffrage dress white. I also added some interfacing to the cuffs and to the collar. So that's some iron-on interfacing there, which again, not really historically accurate, but is helpful. So here I am adding the lace to the cuffs of my sleeves and then sewing it all together with my hand crank sewing machine. I was worried that making this was going to take forever because I'm doing it by a hand crank sewing machine versus my electric one, but that was indeed not the case. The hand crank went really quick and my arm really didn't get too tired, so I was very pleased about that. I guess they knew what they were doing back in 1916. It was also really cool to think like I could use this sewing machine even in a power outage. It's so useful. It's me powered. Also, I think antique sewing machines are just so much more beautiful than the plastic ones that we have today, even though the plastic computerized ones are super cool and I love the computerized technology that we have with it. It's just not the same. Now, I did have to break my modern machine back out to do a gathering stitch. While I'm pretty sure I could have figured out how to do a gathering stitch with my antique one, I just thought it better to be safe and it was just going to be easier to do it how I already knew how to do it. So I did bring my modern machine back out to do that, a gathering stitch around the front and back of the bodice as well as around the sleeves. And then I went directly back to my hand crank sewing machine to do the rest of what I needed to do on the bodice. But the bodice is just about done. I was very impressed with how quickly it went together. This pattern was pretty straightforward. Again, I don't really read the directions. I just kind of treat patterns as a giant 3D puzzle. But I did stick to the directions pretty well with this one, and they were pretty straightforward with the pattern in the directions as well. So I really enjoyed that. Here I am working on the skirt. So the skirt, it has these fun kind of like lightning bolt pleats or darts at the front here, which I am going to pin down here and then sew on the antique sewing machine. These pleats are on either side of the front overlapping skirts, which then will be attached to the underskirt via the side seam. So it looks like there's a skirt over a skirt, but really it just has these two front flap pieces, which I had way too much fun with, and you'll see in just a little bit how it all works together. This was the only a little bit confusing part for me, was trying to figure out how the skirt went together with these flaps, because when I looked at it I was like, oh, like there's like a flap and then a whole skirt under it, but no, kind of fakes it like that. Now the skirts are finished by this whole interfacing system right here, so they are not just hemmed, they have a whole facing just dedicated to the skirt flaps here. On the edge of the seam, I use the antique sewing machine to stitch it all down, but then to fold it, I didn't want to have just another line of stitching, so I actually hand attached the other edge of the facing to the skirt flaps, so that there wouldn't just be like a line of stitching like 3 inches in to the skirt flap. That's going to be right there on the front of the skirt. I just did a simple hem stitch to finish off the facing here. Now it's time to complete the front and the back of the skirt and then layer in those fun flaps that are going to go in the front. So there were a couple darts here in the skirt to make it very fitted, because the skirt comes all the way up to right under the bust, but unlike Regency, it is very fitted through the waist. So the skirt is high, but not full at all. It is very, very fitted. So here you can see this is where I am layering in those flaps and then placing the back over it. It will have a side opening, so where that nice fitted side is, it'll remain open so that I can, get the dress on. But then we're just going to stitch the side seams down, just some simple straight side seams following the curves as they go. Then the skirt will be together. It looks far more complicated than it is, but here it is.
When I slipped this skirt on, I wasn't sure if it was going to fit. I forgot what side I was supposed to put a slit in, and then I need to fix that. But I'm glad to report that it did indeed fit. It is very narrow through the hips, like very fitted, which I like the silhouette. I think that's really cool. But my first time ever doing a 19-teens dress. This is 1912. We don't have a hobble skirt, but it's not very big either. I can walk, but that's I'm not going to be able to run in this. I also really think that this is kind of fun, the overlap. I don't have it sewn onto the bodice yet, so I just I feel like a little butterfly. I was running out of bed sheets, so I had to have a seam down the front of the skirt, which in a perfect world there would not be, but when I cross this, you really can't tell at all. So far very happy with how this is looking, and I am excited to attach it to the bodice. So we're going to try it on with the bodice too, because I don't know if I've actually tried this on. Ooh, okay, I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Feels good. Okay, and then that'll go like this. So this is kind of what our final look is going to be like. It's a real interesting silhouette. I've always loved the costumes in Titanic, and that is what this is reminding me of, the silhouette of it, which is like very blousey, like top, very fitted skirt. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I think I'm going to like it, and if not, I'll just pretend that I'm Rose on Titanic, because that's literally like my favorite movie. So
to attach the bodice to the skirt, I put right sides together and then stitched all the way around, leaving my side opening, open so that I could get it on. But otherwise, I was a little nervous that this might be a little too thick to go through the antique machine, but it handled it no problem at all. Especially because the bodice is so gathered. The bodice is gathered at the front flaps and then also at the center back. It's kind of interesting because the bodice is very poofy, but then the skirt is very fitted. So it is an interesting, it'll create an interesting silhouette, which I am interested to try on. I'm not sure how I'm going to like it.
Alright, I have sewn the bodice onto the skirt. There is a opening on the side here, which I am going to research and see when the zipper was invented. I don't think a zipper was invented by 1912, so I'm probably going to end up using hooks and eyes to close the side here. But I am just a wee bit nervous about getting this on over everything, because it is very tight fitting, the skirt is. So let's see, shall we? Alright, it went on just fine. Feeling pretty good about that. I definitely think I'm going to need to kind of get the hooks and eyes here to make sure that my waistline is being held in place because it's a little loosey-goosey right now. But I think once I get the hooks and eyes sewn in place, it'll be much better. And it is supposed to have a little bit of poof, a little leftover pigeon breast from the early days of the 20th century. There's also going to be like a cute little bow belt that I'm going to make to go right here, and then there's the chemisette that goes here. So I don't have to worry about this being such a deep V or anything. It gets filled in. So but there we are. I'm so glad this dress is coming together so nicely. Now we just have to do those finishing details.
For the closure at the side, I hand sewn in some hook and eye tape, and well, then the dress was essentially done, but also not, because I get to add this cute little belt with a bow to the bust, right where the I don't want to call it the waistline because it's above the waist, but where this dress's waistline is going to be, which is where the bodice and skirt are attached, which is right below the bust line. So we get a bust belt, essentially. Anyway, it sounds cuter than what I'm making it sound to be. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the belt here. As you can see, I'm just folding that in half, ironed it, stitching it down on the far side, and then I'm going to make a cute little bow out of the same fabric, cutting a rectangle and then another rectangle and sewing it together, gathering it in the middle. I know I'm hand gathering this one because, well, it's so little and I want to make sure it has just the right little peaks, the right little poof to it. Again, hand sew the other little rectangle that's going to be the middle of our bow. I'm going to hand sew that together so that it has just the right look. Then I'm going to sew that bow to the belt and then tack that belt onto the dress. Now that the dress is essentially done, I'm going to start on sewing the chemisette. The chemisette is going to be made out of lace. It's going to have a little lace collar, some lace trim on it. It's going to be lovely. And while I have been enjoying the sound of the antique sewing machine the entire time that I'm sewing this, I realized that I didn't record any audio while making the dress without my video or music or audio going on in the back. So here, please enjoy some sewing ASMR and hear just the lovely tapping and sounds of the antique sewing machine. Here's the lace trim that I'm going to line the collar of the chemisette with. And then, of course, I'm going to use some hook and eye tape to secure my chemisette. So here is the finished suffragist look. I made the sash, oh goodness, 4 years ago during the last election. I have a whole video on that if you would like to see it. Here is Lucky being the ultimate suffrage accessory. Suffrage and cats have a whole history. I have more down in the description below with links that you can go and read more about that. But Lucky would like for me to say on her behalf that she would like for you to vote for the most cat-friendly candidate in this upcoming election. I hope that everyone who is able to goes out and votes. Voting is so important for our democracy. I have links down below in the description box to help you figure out the whole voting situation if you need. So stay safe, everybody. Take care, and we'll make it through this election season. We always do.